right, here we go. Good evening and welcome to the Parks, Recreation, and Beautification Committee meeting. Would you please call roll?
Commissioner Porter, Commissioner Casals,
Here.
Commissioner Paula,
Here.
Saber Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Jones,
Here.
Gilbert Salguero, Thomas Martin, Philip Frazee,
Here.
Jamal Williams, and Clyde Davis.
Present.
Very good, thank you. We have a quorum, so we will move on to the approval of the minutes of the July 18th meeting. Before you, you have the minutes of the past meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of the meeting?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Minutes approved. The next item is discussion and recommendation regarding the City of Clovis shooting range management. Mr. Howald.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. As I mentioned at the last Parks and Recreation meeting, the management company that was originally scheduled to manage the facility for us is no longer capable of doing that. And so since that time, we've been working with the New Mexico Department of Game and Fish on what options that we may have, as well as how we could potentially amend the existing agreement with them to allow for increased fees at the facility, reviewing those fees annually, and what other avenues to generate revenue out at the range that we may have. And since that time, they have come back to us and actually proposed an amendment to the agreement to us that would increase the fees for the sporting clays, for the trap and skeet clays, for the use of the indoor archery and pellet range, as well as the outdoor range. As part of that agreement, they also are proposing, like I said, to allow us to review those on an annual basis to make any adjustments to those fees. Of course, it would have to go back to them for approval, but as costs increase, to be able to make those adjustments to the fees as well. One of the other clarifications that they also made in the proposed amendment is to allow us to put all of the revenues, previously all the revenues had to go back into the maintenance of the facility itself. They've expanded that language as well to allow it to go into the operations and maintenance of the facility itself. And so by including the operations of the range, that would allow us to use any of those revenues that are generated to go towards salaries, should we move in the direction of the city taking over the management of the facility and obviously hiring employees to run the facility for us. And so we also had discussions with them because there's obviously classrooms out at the Hunter Education Center. And so it's like, well, if those classrooms aren't in use for Hunter education classes, what else can we do with those? And so we proposed ideas such as, can we rent those rooms out if somebody's having a birthday party or something, they want to come out and rent a room and go out and shoot a round of sporting clays. And they said, absolutely, yes, that's something that we could put together. Once again, as long as the revenues generate off of it, go back into the operation and maintenance of the range. We've asked questions like, if we have a concession stand out there where we're selling snacks or bottled waters or Cokes or whatever, can we do that? The answer is yes, as long as grant funds aren't going towards that, but any revenues generated off of them are going back into the operations of the facility. So we've tried to get outside of the box on how we could potentially generate revenues at the range itself in order to try and offset some of the expenditures that are obviously going to be generated by us taking over the maintenance or the operation of the facility itself. And so Mr. Hooper and Ms. Burrows and myself sat down and put together a proposed budget of what it could look like. Of course, this is just proposed and our best guess at what our costs are going to be. It's our best guess at what potential revenues that could be created out there. And just so we would have an idea, starting with the personnel services, of course, what we programmed in there is a range superintendent at $15 an hour plus benefits and a full-time maintenance employee at $12 an hour plus benefits. We're required by our grant agreement with the Department of Game and Fish to keep the range open at a minimum of 4 days a week, 6 hours a day. And so this is what that reflects in those salaries. Just for your information, if you just simply did the math for the hours times the $15 an hour and didn't include the benefits, it definitely doesn't equal, say, that $45,000. The city of Clovis, based off the benefits packages that we offer our employees, health insurance alone, the city's cost is around $20,000 just for our health insurance per employee. And so that you can see where that basically doubles the cost for the range superintendent, and definitely is more than the hourly, almost more than the hourly rate for the maintenance supervisor. And so, like I said, this is our best guess at that. We figured that we better include maybe some type of benefits package in there, not knowing who would potentially apply for this particular position. And so we wanted to make it as lucrative at the same time trying to keep that hourly cost down. So by adding those benefits to it, it certainly has some value to working for the city of Clovis. Then across on the contractual services, we looked at just some of our line items that we have included in some of the other departments' budgets and tried to come up with our best guess on what those could potentially cost, and then as well as the commodities. And so when you add all those up, our total expenditures, proposed expenditures, are $135,800 for the range itself. And then we obviously started working on the revenue side of the budget and trying to, once again, come up with our best guess on how much revenue could be generated out at the range. And so just for example, looking at the shooting, so the trap and skeet, based on 8 shooters per day that the range is open, 200 days. Granted, we're going to be open up 365 days, or 200 days out of the 365. And so in 2 rounds per shooter, we came up with $25,000, $600 in revenues. And so we tried to do our best forecasting. This is not something that we've done in the past, obviously, and opening up a range is new to us. So once again, we put some numbers in there, tried to be conservative in an approach. Then our total revenue projection is $93,840. Obviously, the difference between the expenditures and the revenues is a shortfall of almost $42,000 that essentially the city of Clovis would then be having to subsidize out at the shooting range. That would obviously come probably out of our general fund for the city of Clovis, as most of our parks are obviously funded out of the general fund. To those individual facilities themselves. So really just wanted to open up the conversation with the committee. You know, this is one option for the city of Clovis, is bringing it back in-house and us managing the facility itself. Another option potentially would be to put out a request for proposal to see if another organization would like to either form or individual would like to come out and manage the facility for us that wouldn't be under as a city of Clovis employee. And then some other thoughts that we've had as far as employees themselves is we have created positions what we call casual employees, and to where we have, it's like a substitute teacher, to where we have a list of employees that may be interested, and then as we look at schedule, and then it would fall back on Russell and Tari probably to manage trying to fill that scheduled time themselves to have those employees out of an available list that could potentially work out there. So once again, just kind of wanted to open up the conversation, start getting some feedback, looking for some direction, so that obviously we have a beautiful facility sitting out there, and we're looking forward to getting it open as soon as possible. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Howald. Does anyone have any questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Howald, transportation and education, does that include a vehicle for them?
Yeah, under the contractual services there, that transportation and education line item would be if they are needing to go to certification classes, et cetera, in order to be, for example, for that superintendent to be the range master. If there's classes that they need to take, that's where that line item would come into play.
Well, I feel like they need a vehicle. I mean, we have employees that, in my opinion, don't need a vehicle, but they have it. And I feel like he's going to be traveling back and forth, what is it, 5, 6, 7 miles?
Yeah, and so it would probably be, I mean, from a going to work standpoint, I mean, it would be their own responsibility to get themselves to the park. But once they're there, they would have a vehicle if they needed to come into town, et cetera, we wouldn't make the employee utilize their own vehicle if they're doing city business.
Thank you, Commissioner Casals. Does anyone have any other questions?
Yeah, I do, and I came into the middle of this. I've only been on committee since January. So maybe some of these questions have been dealt with and I just don't know it. But what are we doing to vet the actual use of the range? In other words, to make a cartoon of it, we're not gonna just let anybody go out there and start blowing off rounds, are we? That's the fear that comes across, especially because we're talking Ned Helk. And I mean, I'm a firearms owner. I'm a Second Amendment guy. But it just concerns me, again, coming into it ignorant of whatever may have been laid out before I got on committee might be good because that's the public perception.
Yeah.
What are we going to do to, and maybe this is down the road or maybe it's already been discussed. I know people that I think they'd be awesome to go out there and fire off rounds in practice. I've got neighbors I wouldn't trust anywhere near the place, and we're all in that position. So I guess, does that become the job of, and I'm talking about proximity too, in the sense that my little boy goes out there and uses the equipment. We have our bison living out there. We've got guys riding dirt bikes. It's got to be such that we don't blow off some 13-year-old on a dirt bike and say, whoops, sorry, we should have done this ahead of time. So I'm wondering about that piece of it from the perspective of the new guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in regards to the range itself, it's strictly a shotgun range, and it's limited to size 7 shot. And so, plus the archery. But obviously the trap and skeet areas are developed in, they're overlay courses and developed in bays. And so you're shooting a certain direction. In this particular instance, you're shooting to the north only.
Okay.
The sporting clays course, which is located further to the north, however, it's outside the fall zone of the pellets themselves out of a shotgun. And so that's out of the range of the trap and skeet. The sporting clays course is, like I said, is further to the north there. It's set up in a manner to where you're either shooting north or south on there. And once again, the entire facility itself is fenced. And the fence lines are outside, or put the fall zone within the fence line itself. And then, of course, we have signs up all around the shooting range itself saying, hey, this is an active shooting range, warning anybody that is utilizing the trail system, please don't cut our fence, obviously, and come into this area because you could potentially get hit by shot. So the area is definitely fenced. In regards to who can utilize the range, being the fact that it was paid for with ultimately Fish and Wildlife Service down through the New Mexico Department of Game and Fish funds, it's open to the public. And so there is not a vetting process that says, hey, present your card, you can utilize a range, you can't utilize a range, say like a hunter education course type card. That's not a requirement of the facility itself. So we do have range rules that all the individuals, they're posted at every bay. So for the trap and skeet on what they can do, we have range rules for the indoor, that archery and pellet gun area that are posted. And so it's good firearm practices. Obviously, we'd have a range master on site to where that they can monitor and make sure that people are acting responsibly.
Okay. Well, I guess I would say, again, just from my perspective coming on new, we really need to get the word out before we open because the misconceptions out there are, like I said, I didn't even know we were just allowing shotguns. I'm thinking somebody out there with a high cal. Yeah, right. I'm like, gee, what a nightmare,
Yeah. Definitely only shotguns. Shotgun is a shotgun range.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. I guess I do have a few questions, Mr. Howell. The first one kind of is along the same lines. I'm assuming that the range master has to have certain certification in order to have that job, just like a lifeguard has to be certified. You can't just put anybody out there to be the range manager.
There is certifications, and actually Russell has a certification. And so whoever we put in there, we'd probably give them a certain, if they're not already certified, we'd give them a certain time period to
get that done.
Get that certification.
Okay.
That's correct.
I also had a thought regarding the employee or the range superintendent. So if we're going to offer a benefits package to them, which is half of the salary, wouldn't it make more sense, and maybe this is the plan, I just don't understand, rather than hiring someone, say, for 24 hours a week, also giving them a $20,000 benefits package, wouldn't it make more sense to hire someone full-time, maybe not put them at the range full-time, but they can be there for the 24 hours a week, and then the other 16 hours a week, they can work for Parks and Rec Department?
It's,
Because then that cuts down basically on the salary, because the benefits can be split between the range and.
yeah, it all still would come out of the general fund, just simply because that's the way we fund our parks. And so certainly, I'm certain that Russell would never turn down another employee to assist. But just looking going, so we're going to add that extra 16 hours. And so trying to keep the cost as low as possible to try and reduce that subsidy to it. So if we're going to have them on there for another 16 hours, that'd be times the $15 an hour potentially.
Well, but I'm
the
not
benefits
saying,
cost
like,
us
you've
the
already
benefits.
encountered the biggest cost in the benefits. So, I mean, I feel like there's positions open all over the city. Wouldn't it make more economic sense to use someone full-time, charge the shooting range the 24 hours, but then the additional 16 hours a week, they could work for wherever there's an open spot? Because we've already paid for the benefits.
So are you?
That make sense?
I guess, let me make sure I'm tracking with you. Are you saying instead of filling another one of our positions, share them across two?
Correct. Because you've already paid $20,000 worth of benefits, we might as well get 40 hours a week.
So don't create a position, use one of our existing positions?
Well, either or. I mean, if you need to create a position and that position needs to run the shooting range for 24 hours a week, or they work there 4 days a week, then the other however many hours we have to create a full-time position, they can run a program at Roy Walker, or, because, again, we've already paid for full-time benefits.
Correct.
So those extra 16 hours are going to be less expensive to the city.
100% agreed. So
Okay.
that
Is it
isn't.
possible? Is that
It is a possible, it's just, it's going to drive the bottom line even further.
but not necessarily, I don't feel like. I don't feel like it would for here. I don't think it's going to change this estimate at all.
No, but I'm saying, so this $41,000 that's going to have to be subsidized to the shooting
Right.
range is coming out of our general fund. And so that so that extra 16 hours is also going to come out of the general fund for that employee on a weekly basis.
I agree. But I would say that would be a bad idea if we are fully staffed across the city, but we're not. So could we use that person, because those extra 16 hours are cheaper to the city because we don't have to pay that person benefits, we've already taken care of
Yeah,
that.
and I agree with that, assuming every other position's not, if we don't get filled up,
Right,
because we've already budgeted for
Right.
it.
okay. Go ahead, Mr. Hooper.
And the other thing I would kind of want to say along the same lines is, so I have a position here that's I'm paying a gentleman $15 an hour. And like I say, now he goes over, works over at rec. That he's got to fill in certain gaps. He's worked 4 days of 6 hours. So he's got 16 hours short.
Right,
If I give him 2 8s, now he's working a 6-day week, which, I mean, and again, there's possibilities, obviously, but it is a juggling. Now, am I putting, you hate to say the guy that runs the range and then have him go out and hand kids basketballs?
no, and I understand, I'm just thinking, hey, we've got 16 hours here of, where we're not have to pay somebody benefits, let's utilize it if it works for the city.
Now the other option, I think, and Justin and I discussed this discussed this back and forth, was, hopefully at some point we get busy enough to where I'm gonna have to stay open more than 6 hours a day, because I still got 6 guys out there ready to spend some money.
Right,
So that gives me some flexibility there too. I don't have to worry about overtime. I can
Right.
just pull him 8 hours. Or we're having something real registered this weekend to where I need a couple of 10-hour days out of him. And I got some flexibility there also. So that's some of it that plays into it.
okay.
And
Go ahead.
once we budget it, I mean, we'll put it in the budget. And honestly, once again, this is our best guess. And as far as utilization of the range, we may get swamped. We have no idea. Or there may be one person out there and these revenues aren't as near as high as what we've projected here, which then makes that subsidy, that 41,000, even larger. So until we start getting some historical information, we're gonna have to stay flexible, I'd say. So
Oh,
I'm
absolutely.
definitely starting with something like this maybe, and then adjust as
Yeah,
we
I
go.
have no problem with the budget at all. I mean, I think you guys did a great job with basically shooting in the dark. So you did good. One more question, though. Can we start out the range as a city-managed range, just to get it up and going, and then put out an RFP, and then see if a group or organization wants to come in and manage?
And I guess the answer would be yes.
Okay.
However, if we did put out an RFP and then we turned over the operation, now I've got 2 employees that either applied for those positions and don't want to go work with at
Oh,
another
fair
position
enough,
within the city,
yes.
and I'm gonna have to say politely, sorry, we've dissolved your positions.
All right, does anyone else have any comments or anything?
Hey, Justin, have we reached out to any other ranges similar to this, to see what their expenditures are and their revenue is, by chance?
Russell, I don't know. Russell was down in Roswell. They had a shoot down there this last weekend and had some conversations. And
So the range in Roswell is, the land is owned by the city. They basically lease it to this club for $1 a lifetime, $1 a year type thing, who is completely run by volunteers. Everything goes back into it. So it's kind of a different calculation. It really is. They just don't have that initial $80,000. Everything else, we're pretty much in the ballpark as far as the prices. We've checked a couple different places, and our rounds are about the same between Amarillo, Raton. We've checked, like I say, Roswell. So our pricing is great. It's just a matter of, like I say, that subsidy. I haven't gotten to go to Albuquerque or Raton yet to look at theirs, but.
I have a couple of questions, and they may have been answered, and I wasn't here for them. The first one is is there anybody locally that can manage this? One of the gun shops or managers at the gun shops, have they been contacted, offered the opportunity to manage that in addition, or?
well, that would, I have been contacted after the newspaper article from an individual that said, hey, if you guys create a position, I'm interested in it. I've run, they were archery ranges. He said, I've been a team shooter for an archery. This is something I'm interested in doing and working for. Have we reached out to any of the local gun shops to say, hey, would you guys come and manage this for us? No, we have not done that. And that would create us having to put out that RFP to see if anybody is willing to provide those services to us. I think that the hard part, honestly, would come down to, are they going to be able to, so they're going to have an employee out there. So it'd be a very similar situation to where they're going to have to hopefully generate enough revenues to pay that employee. And then I'm guessing that they would want some sort of management fee on top of that. And so the city of Clovis, we're still going to have to put some money into this. How much? Once again, I have no idea.
I certainly think that would be worth entertaining, at least going through the exercise. And partly because I don't know that the gun shop owners feel this way, but as a businessman, I would get the feeling that I'm competing with the city to a degree, and that doesn't make me feel good as a business owner. And the other thing is that I see on the list targets, consumables, and that's again one of those things that obviously need to be available out there, but I don't feel good when this is something that is offered through a retail service that's already available in Clovis, and I feel like that. I don't know. Is there an option for that the gun store owner or the gun store to be the provider, maintainer, vendor of the retail goods, the targets, the consumables, the clays, and it's I just don't. It doesn't feel good to me that we would be competing with them unless they are being the supplier, unless we're being supplied by them. Our first priority is to take care of the people in our community, right? So, I would like to know what we've done to maybe instead of us providing those consumables, for the gun shops to make an offer to do that.
Yeah, and so the thought process, what we can and cannot do, especially when it comes to generating revenues out at the range, our hands are tied because of the agreement and how the range was funded itself. And so back when they were starting the conceptual idea of putting in the range, that's why it's a shotgun range. At the time in the community, there was existing ranges for rifles and handguns, and so that was covered in the community, and that's why those are not available out at ours, because there's not another shotgun range that I'm aware of in our immediate area. And so that's why it's limited to that. When it comes to consumables, like we have on there, gift shop, and so our thought process is that hearing protection, eye protection, are we going to have targets? Absolutely, we'd sell targets out there. It does not stop somebody from bringing their own, obviously with the other items as well. And then having some shotgun shells out there, because we don't want to have a group out there that's having a good time, they run out of shotgun shells, and now they have to come 7 miles back into town to buy more shotgun shells, and we potentially lose out on the revenues from selling them more rounds of sporting clays or trap and target space. So we're not going to keep a large inventory out there. That was not our thought process whatsoever. But trying to make sure that if somebody does run out of something, we would have it on site, recognizing the location of where the facility is.
Okay.
I also think along the same lines is, like I say, with the outsider or private business company, is we can't contract and you make any type of profit. According to the state, whatever like I say, our agreement is, every profit has to go back into it. So, are we really gonna find a business that wants to sell out and break even? Because you never break even. You're either losing money or you're making money. And if you can't make it, then, and that's kind of some of our thought process too.
Well, I would assume that based on the previous group that was going to manage that they had profit built into their deal.
They were a 501.
They were 100% volunteer? Yes. Okay, all right.
Some of the profit.
I wonder why they backed out.
Well, another thing I'm concerned about is I don't think we can wait for the RFP process. That takes several months. I've been a part of that process. And we've already been waiting long enough for this range to open up. I mean, it's been sitting out there empty for 5 months now-ish.
We were ready to go. I mean, we started making notifications to the previous organization around the end of May. As soon as the company that was contracted to set up the sporting clays, the machines themselves, as soon as they were finished, we were starting to say, hey, let's get this thing open. We're ready to go. So around May is when we were actually ready to go. So a couple months, definitely.
Yeah, a couple months, but yeah, I mean, we're still well behind what we anticipated, because
Correct.
originally it was supposed to open up last year, correct?
Yep.
So, I mean, we're way behind on this. The community's been waiting on it. And so, I mean, I think you guys have done a great job on the current budget, just for a best guess. And hopefully it gets more usage than what you have here, so that'd be nice.
Is that a motion, Commissioner Jones?
I think,
Sorry, go ahead.
I did, you were sneaking in.
Thank you. Thanks, Commissioner. Real quick, and I guess this is the perk of having a board that turns over. So, marketing, do we have a strategy? Is there a line item there? Or do we have?
Yes, there is. So if you look under the printing and advertising, would be our marketing.
Oh,
I think the $5,000 we have in there. Yes.
And I think fortunately on this, as Lonnie on, it is a fairly small community that all consider themselves professional shooters. And so when we tell one, they tell all their friends who tell other friends. And it's actually faster than the internet.
And so marketing, what we're thinking of, and once again, in conversations that we've had with Department of Game and Fish, so if we're going to have a registered shoot, which is basically is where they're scoring the individuals. And so we have 4 bays out there, overlay bays. We can't use every bay for a registered shoot. There's always got to be at least a bay open and available to the public for anybody that wants to come out there and utilize the facility.
Anything else, Mr. Martin? You good? Okay.
I will make a motion that we go forward with presenting this to the commission with the current budget as is laid out.
Okay, very good.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Let's find some employees.
And Madam Chairman, members of the Parks, Recreation and Beautification Committee, I was at the Quality of Life meeting at Cannon Air Force Base this afternoon and shared this information about the shooting range as part of that, and received various comments afterwards. People know about it, they know it's coming, and they're excited about it, so just
Wonderful.
FYI.
So once we get the employees hired, is it ready to go within?
Yeah, we'll train them up
Right.
on how to utilize the software system. There's actually cards, so when you come in and buy a round of sporting clays or trap and skeet, then you program into that card, and then you actually just go out there, and every time you yell pull, it registers on that card and takes it down. And so we'll have to get them all trained up on the software.
Very good, thank you. All right. The next item agenda is discussion and recommendation regarding prioritization of improvements at Potter Park, Ryerson Park, and Green Acres Park. Mr. Hooper.
Yes, hopefully, I think Lisa sent out my list of my whittled down list that we started with. Looking at most of things, even on this list, the shelters, the rebuilds and the paints, the painting and the rebuilding of the shelters, that's gonna be maintenance. I'd love to pull it out of the other, but I agree that it is a maintenance cost. So we're really down to playgrounds, some railing and fencing at Ryerson, the playground at Green Acres, the skate park at Green Acres, playground at Potter, and then some basketball, repairing lights, repairing goals. So we're kind of down to that. I think what we kind of what I need is how to divide it out. I believe we have 300, correct, Claire?
Yes.
300,000 on that. So it's, as you know, Dennis Chavez was a $100,000 playground. The playground at Green Acres, being the 2 to 5-year-old, would not be that much, obviously, unless you wanted it to be. I mean, there's different things we can go, so we kind of need some prioritization, I guess, or how do we want to divide that by 3 or 4, or how many pieces of the pie?
Okay.
Do you come in at 75 at, like say Green Acres for the 2 to 5-year-old? Well, then that lets you do 125 at Ryerson. Or do you kind of split them all up? Am I making sense?
Yes, no, you're making total sense. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to have you just ramble on.
I do that.
So I'm not sure how to best approach this either. I think I'll just start talking and then
That's what I do.
I'll give my 2 cents worth and then we can carry on from there. Does that work for everybody? Sure. Okay. So I spent the better part of one Sunday touring all 3 of these parks. Just in very general terms, Green Acres to me needs the most help. I feel like it's in the heart of the city. I feel like people drive by it constantly, and it just really needs some help. I spent many days there with my sons during the years, and I don't think any of that has changed in 23 years. It looks exactly the same, just it needs some help. Yes, 23 years older. I do agree that I think that 2 to 5-year-old playground definitely needs some help. I actually tried to move some of the equipment there, and it doesn't even work. I think that the skate park is in dire need of some improvements. It's just kind of sad. And I think there's a lot of people that utilize that. Every time I drove by again this afternoon, and there were kids all over that park. So I really feel like that place needs some help. I am a little concerned about all the dead trees at Green Acres also. I think that we need some chainsaws out there, stat, to take those things down and at least make it look clean and tidy. I did notice that the shoes are still hanging on the line. I guess maybe they'll come down with some rain one day. Maybe tonight. That would be lovely. And the graffiti on, like I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, at that park is pretty bad also. I'll move on to Ryerson. The railing and the fencing, especially the fencing, is terrible. It looks like it's about to fall down any moment. But my question is, do we have to have fencing around it? Wouldn't it, almost wonder if it would look nicer just getting rid of it. Is that against the law? Do we have to have fence around a park?
Madam Chair, members of the board, the answer is no. We don't have to have fencing around our parks. And we have a lot of fencing around our parks, and we have a lot of pipe rail around our parks, and honestly, it creates maintenance. From a safety standpoint, you know, in Russell and I've had, it's like trying to keep vehicular traffic off our parks is one side of it. However, the time that we put into maintaining those pipe rail fences, if a car got out onto one of our parks, the damage that they would do and the cost for us to fix it is probably less than what we spend painting pipe rail fence every year. Trying to keep the kiddos inside the park is the other aspect of that.
That's impossible.
Does pipe rail do that?
No.
Parents do that. Obviously, a pipe rail doesn't keep a soccer ball inside of a fence. And so I guess it just comes down to the committees and the commission's guidance on whether or not we want to have fences around our parks.
To me, my thought around Ryerson is it's such a low traffic area that I would rather see that fence just come down and clean it up and remove the dead trees. And I think it would make that park look 100% better with just fence removal.
And I tend to agree with that. Now, I do understand that let's, Pat Sandoval Park, right there on 84. I gotta leave that fence. I mean, you know, that's just a common sense
Right.
thing to where, like I said, at Ryerson, I'm not really stopping anything. I can't keep a motorcycle, I can't keep a four-wheeler, no matter what type of fence, because they can get in.
Right.
A car, if he wants in, he can get in. And if someone's gonna be that, they're gonna decide to do that, they're going to accomplish it. So again, we're back to more maintenance and more repairs than we would have been if we just let him tear up a little bit of grass.
I just hate to see us sink, you know, I don't know how much, tens of thousands of dollars in new fencing around Ryerson Park. To me, that seems like a waste of money.
Repeatedly. And
Yes.
I mean, understand that may last 5 or 10 years, but you do the math on that one and.
Right, right. No, I agree. I'll keep it brief because I know I've been talking too long, but when I went around Potter Park, it actually, in my opinion, had some of the nicest playground equipment of all the parks in town. But the basketball, I agree, it needs some help. It's sad. I'd love to see some old goals be taken down, some new nice goals be put up, the concrete patched and painted, and so you can actually play some basketball on that area over there. And yes, I agree with your paint and all that needs to be done there as well. So I'll turn it over to somebody else who has some ideas.
I thought you were doing a great job.
Well, I can keep talking, but I don't want to monopolize.
So, I mean, I would agree. I think Green Acres is probably the focal point, right? And we probably need to put more money into Green Acres at this point in time. So, I mean, we're talking about how we're gonna split this up. To start, why don't we go with 150,000 for Green Acres, 75 for the other two parks? That gives us our $300,000, right? And if we have some money left over in the other two parks, or vice versa, we can just move that money around. But it puts most of our emphasis on Green Acres to try to get that park back up to speed.
Anyone have any other thoughts?
I totally agree with the way it's been said. I do want the fence at Ryerson. I think we do for safety issues. I know cars race up and down that street. My cousin lives in that street, and he says you don't see a policeman over there patrolling and, you know, it's, what's it called, Hollywood? I think that's what the name is for them, for that street. And I think you would get cars in and out of that park, and I would hate to have kids playing in that park and somebody racing up and down that street.
And that may be, Commissioner, that may be one of those, because I know the east-west street, now, my names are terrible, we know that. I can't even spell AYSO some days. And as opposed to the north-south street, we've got the trees up and down there. So that may be one where we can pull out what would be the chain link fence, throw some stones in between, and we've basically limited the access on that side. To where the other side that is more open and is next to the playground, we can keep like the pipe rail fence, but at least now we've limited our maintenance and we've decreased some of that.
Rather than a pipe rail fence, could we do the stones like we have going into the entrance to the pool?
And that would be my recommendation. Obviously, that stone has been that color for a very long time, and we don't have to paint it. And so somebody else may paint it for us, but
It'll stop
the
a car.
entrance, it does the same thing, but we don't have the continued maintenance on it. And I mean, on the pipe rail fences, we've obviously, they were traditionally white, the rust would come through. We've tried to paint them brown to where it tries to hide some of that rust. Unfortunately, it's flaking off as well, and there's some maintenance to those
Try
pipe rail
sanding 'em.
fences. So.
Yeah, I like that recommendation, the rocks,
Okay,
the stones
wonderful.
or whatever.
So that would be as you come into Ryerson, right by that small playground that's right there, put those stones along that. Okay, yeah, I think that'll look nice. But question, so if we had allot 75,000 to Ryerson, does that replace that playground equipment there? Because I hate to just put a dollar amount in there and it's not really going to do any good.
If you wanted something, like say, similar to Dennis Chavez, that's a $100,000 playground.
Yeah.
Can you downsize? Can you do a few things? Of course. I know we have also talked about inclusive playgrounds. Those are a lot more, you know, those features become a lot more expensive. So sometimes, like I said, by limiting numbers, but on the other hand, it may wind up to where, let's be honest, I've got 300 and I got to find another 50 somewhere to compensate some of that to hit, you know.
I guess what I'm afraid of is if we, Commissioner Jones, I like your idea of how you split it up, but what I'm afraid of is that we just kind of arbitrarily throw a number at each park, and really in the end, it's not enough to do anything at any of the parks. Like, I feel like $150,000 is, will that even do the skate park? It's not going to do the skate park and replace the 2 to 5 year old playground equipment.
Depends on, that goes back to depends on what you want to do on the skate park. Now, what we can do is if we agree to, let's say, that ratio, 75, 150, 75, then that'll give me a chance. I can come back and say, all right, let me get a price for a playground. All right, here's what a 75,000 one looks like, and here's what 100. Which way do you want to go at Ryerson? Here's what a 2 to 5 year old, I've gotten 3 different bids. Those are going to come in at 60. Skate park, let me see, do we want bolt-on features or do we want to build some concrete? One of them's 25,000, one of them's 50,000. So I can do some of those once we start knowing some ratios.
Okay. Well, then, would you be okay with leaving it the way we have it now and then kind of come back with some prices? Because what I don't want to do is do something and have it be mediocre everywhere.
Right.
And we don't have the contracts yet on the capital outlay funds, and so obviously we can't spend any money until those are in place and approved. And so that certainly we have time to go out, but if y'all's focus is Green Acres and trying to get some of those improvements made first, we can start collecting those prices and then bring all that back to that. I hate to belabor and us keep coming back to you guys, but I mean, we're making some good decisions here on how what in which parks we're focusing on and trying to clean up. And so I think if the playground and the skate park is something that y'all are interested in at Green Acres, we can get prices on those and then see how much money is left over potentially to spend in the others.
Mr. Martin, did you have a comment? Oh, I'm sorry.
I think sorry, going back to the rocks, I think it's a great idea. Is there any other natural, other than a tree, a rock?
In a hard place? In a hard place?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think when you think about the parks and it being a place of nature, to use nature to our benefit, I just didn't know if there was anything else we can look at that going forward, and maybe making rocks and trees our natural barriers.
A big ditch.
A big ditch. Oh, like a lazy river,
Yeah.
with all the water we have. That would be,
Once a year.
We do have reuse water at our parks.
no, great ideas.
Commissioner Porter, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to hear from everybody on the board here. I don't like to see, I almost, to what you were saying is I feel like if you don't spend enough money at one place, you're really wasting all of the money. Because if you do a mediocre job at each place, it seems to me like we would be better off picking whichever park we feel like we need to work on and spending the vast majority of the money at that park. Get it as up to speed as we can possibly get it as nice as we can possibly get it. Then the next round, we do something else, and then the next round, we do something else. Otherwise, it seems to me like you're just chasing. You're never working towards getting it to a pristine condition where you have everything working. You have the skate park, you have the playground equipment's working, the basketball goals, or whatever it may be, the dead trees. Get one and finish it, or get it completely up to speed, and then we'll move to the next one. And that one goes to the back of the line.
But I think there's still some things at some of the parks that we need to address, though. I mean, the fencing over Ryerson, I mean, there are some things for safety concerns and also making it look a little better. There are things that we're gonna have to take care of in the other parks as well. Maybe not focus on the entire thing, but there's still gonna be some things that we have to address, right? And so, getting some prices on those things, the fence at Ryerson, and replace the lighting and maybe the goals at Potter is a big piece, because we want the kids to go out there and enjoy that piece of it. Maybe we don't tackle some of the other things, and then we focus the rest of the effort on Green Acres. But I still think there's some things we still need to make sure we repair or take care of in the other parks.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would say, I would agree with Mr. Porter, and Representative Zamora contacted me, and I believe the capital outlay, I know it was gonna be spread around, but he said, hey, his grandchildren go out there, and he was like, hey, we're really missing, there's no shade and basically no shade or any trees or anywhere. We got the new lights with the capital outlay last year, and I had spoke with him before and said, hey, we have the old wooden poles. I know we've had to replace them at the softball complex, but those wooden poles are due at any time. They could come down. So I would suggest maybe the lighting on the big field at Potter Park and some bleachers. We don't have any bleachers that are up to date. I sent Russell some pictures, and he had spoke about getting concrete pads and to put the bleachers down. I was in Albuquerque for the state baseball tournament, and there we go. And at every park, they have all the pads, and they actually have the big, I don't know, they're like purlins, or I don't know the exact word, but the big shade structures that they had to build. And one of the guys at Roadrunner Park, he said that they've been up there for 20 years, and they just put some paint on them every now and again, but they last, and they were really, really helpful out in the heat. And, and talking to the fact of, that's finishing off one park, we hosted a district tournament, the Little League district tournament, people from Quay County, Roosevelt, and it was great. But we have the opportunity and options to host a bunch of Little League tournaments, or potential to host Little League tournaments. I think if we get Potter Park, just totally up to speed, I think that would be, I would say that would be the most beneficial, and we can see the most impact right away, and it would come back to the city.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I'm glad you brought that up, because I did want to say that I know you have sent lists to the Parks and Rec and the city regarding needs at Beecham Field. And I also received a letter or an email from Brandon Floyd with a list of items and improvements that he is requesting at Beecham Field. And I don't, trust me, I don't disagree with any of that. My fear, though, Mr. Hooper can probably speak to numbers better than I can, but my fear is if I look at the list of the requests at Beecham Field, I feel like we're gonna eat up $300,000 in like no time flat. Because shade structures, I know we were looking at shade structures right over here for this little park by the library, and I think they were, I mean, they were insanely expensive, and I agree, I agree with it all. I don't know how to best to put this, but I guess I'm just, my heart wants to make this city beautiful. And I feel like Green Acres is kind of the heart of our city. And I just think it has been left alone for so long that I hate to see it left alone for another 23 years. That's my thoughts, but would love to listen to anyone else and their comments.
Madam Chair, I agree with you. I think Hillcrest sees the most activity. I know when they had what was it, the night out, there was kids everywhere, and they were at the skate park, they were at the,
Green Acres,
Green
Okay.
Acres. What did I say?
Hillcrest,
Oh,
Hillcrest, when did that start?
you knew what I meant.
for the record.
But I also agree with Jamal. Potter's Park seems like it's the forgotten field sometimes. And maybe Representative Samora can get us more capital outlay next year. But I agree with Commissioner Paula that I would recommend Green Acres have the majority, the 150, and then the 75 to the other two. And whatever we can do with it, we do it, and then just wait for the rainbow to come in.
Well, and it might be the fact that we spend a little more in Green Acres and there's a little less to go to the other two parks once you come back with your numbers, right?
Right.
So I think what we're trying to say right now as a committee is Green Acres our focus. Now let's go get some actual numbers so we know where we're going to spend the money, right? And so don't negate the other things. If there's things that need to be fixed in the other two parks, we want to see those numbers as well. And then let us decide on, all right, let's go fix this in Green Acres and go fix this over at Ryerson and this over in Potter.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, we have been working on the ICIP, which is the Infrastructure and Capital Improvement Plan for the City of Clovis, and that will be coming to the Commission tomorrow evening for action. And one of the items that we have on there is now concurrent for the next 5 years, $300,000 request for parks improvements generally. So, and I know the year before last, Representative Zamora gave funds to Potter Park to help you with lighting. I think it was the year before. So we have been receiving funding coming down through capital outlay appropriations from the state.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you for mentioning that, Claire. So where are we at? Do we have a motion and a second? No motion.
Do you need a motion? All right, I will make a motion that we make Green Acres our focus, getting to the important things that we need to repair in the other two parks, and request Mr. Russell that we get some prices so we can make a final decision on which way to go forward.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hooper. You've got your work cut out for you, I think.
And I want to thank y'all on that too, because now, obviously, there's 6 playground companies or 4 playground. Well, when I bring them out, none of them, now I know a direction more that I can give them. I can at least give them a basic and outline, hey, this is how our different focuses and priorities should be, and it'll help me out a lot, so I appreciate that.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, the next agenda item is discussion recommendation regarding future leagues at Roy Walker. Mr. Hooper.
Yes, which I'll try to get Tari probably into this to help me out some too. What we're looking at, and just talking to Justin earlier, and he was trying to explain the process to me. So right now, there's really no leagues run out of Roy Walker. We're trying to, again, not compete with anybody that's out there. We don't want to do that. We're just trying to fill some holes. We've talked about a men's basketball league, possibly doing that. We've talked about a kids' basketball league. Let's get something going, whether it's in the fall or the spring. Some different things along those lines. And that's where we just kind of want to present that to y'all. We don't necessarily at this point have a money, because we've got to float the ideas and say, hey, guys, who wants to play basketball on Saturdays? Once I find out I got 40 guys that want to play, I can figure out, okay, well, it's going to be $30 a piece. We're going to have 8 games. I need to hire this many referees, things along those lines. But we're just kind of wanting to present that out there as we would like to start doing that, which obviously if we're going to start doing that, we're going to have to start charging for that and to run some revenue. And so that's where I got to kind of get permission. I can't just I would love to just start up my league and start charging them, but I realize, yeah, we got to get some feedback and things like these. Obviously, there's a break-even point to where we have to do it. I don't want to start a league if I'm going to lose money on it, just because, back to our other revenue issues, that makes no sense. I believe some of the kids' leagues now for softball, for t-ball, baseball, or stuff like that, they're running $75 a kid to play. We would obviously come in way under that, but we don't want to compete baseball to baseball or anything else. Again, there's not a basketball league right now. There's sure not a men's adult basketball. We think we could get some traction, but we want, before we really start, I think Tari's floated the idea out there, and we didn't have too much from the adults. On the other hand, this is the first time we didn't really publish it. We didn't really push it because we didn't really know if we could. I have talked to finance and stuff like that, so we can do our referees and not have to hire city employees. We can actually contract out and say, okay, 4 people are coming out to ref. We're paying you $20 a game to ref. Here's a paycheck at the end of the week. And it's a straight pay thing. So it's not that we have to hire employees. That would only come out of the funds that we would be generating by running the league. So, Tari, did you have anything, or did I do an excellent job?
Oh, you did good. Pretty much with the revenue that you would generate, that would just pretty much cover your referees. Say, for instance, if you wanted to get into stuff like jerseys and stuff like that, you had to charge more. But I was just thinking, if you're going to just start it off, say, for instance, with men, adults, you would just charge roughly around $30 a player. That'd be roughly at least 8 players a team, so that'd be roughly around $240 or something like that. If you ran the league for 8 weeks, it'd be 2 months. So you would do it basically 6 weeks of games, 1 week of makeup games if you have any, like no shows, no calls, anything like that. And then the last game, you would do a single game elimination. So you would seed the teams from seed 1 to 8, or if you got 10, 1 to 10, however you want to do it. And at the end, you would have a champion, like you do a single game elimination. Also, we were thinking about getting trophies that we can get, like say a big one, a medium size, smaller one, and we would reuse those for every league you want to do. So if it was, say, adult flag football, say if it was kickball, dodgeball, whatever kind of leagues that you want to do, those trophies like year in and year out, just for them to take pictures at the end. As far as with the kids, I'm pretty sure you can get pretty good participation from the kids because it's not a lot to do other than you're playing baseball and soccer. I'm not really sure if it's any other kids leagues here. Also football, correct? Like flag football. But other than that, it's no indoor leagues. Other than that, I think it would be a great opportunity for kids to get active and just offer more. The things that we're not offering that people are doing like independently, we can try to see where we can come in and try to offer some things to give kids just different ideas. And it don't even have to be necessarily sports. It can be arts and craft. What if you want to do like maybe a talent show? Like just different things that you can offer the kids. I think that's where we are now, just being able to offer more to the kids.
I think this is wonderful. I'm thrilled that you're willing to do this and want to do this. And I would like for you to have the freedom to do and start wherever you think there's the biggest need. I don't want to tie your hands and tell you
You
what
want to tell me that? You sure you want to tell me that?
All we looking for is permission from the commission to go out and start exploring this? Is that what is it?
I have a question. Don't the youth use the schools for basketball?
So,
I know they use the gyms.
yeah, and one of the things that we're trying to do in conversations that we've had with their new facilities manager, Jay Brady, is trying to how we can collaborate and have these partnerships between the school district and the city of Clovis and what we are offering our youth and how we are utilizing our facilities in general. Obviously, the city of Clovis has 2 gyms as an organization. We have Roy Walker, and that's it. You know, the schools, they have one at all their elementaries, they have them at their middle schools, they have them at their high school. So from a gym standpoint, yes, we may not have the core that Hobbs has and everybody can come to one location from a gym space, but we have lots of gyms that are just underutilized. And how can we create those partnerships to where we are providing those activities to the youth in our area? And so really what we're trying to do and establish is what is your willingness for us to go out and start trying to program these different activities? Of course, we'll still have to work through the details of them, and once we have plans in place and see if there's interest, and then we'd have to actually develop the leagues, bring that to the city commission when it comes to rates, et cetera, what we'd be potentially charging individuals. But just trying, like I said, trying to find out what your willingness is for us to go out and look at this different programming and offerings and try to fill those gaps that aren't currently being offered by either private organizations. And when we talk about youth basketball, you know, we obviously know when I think Upward is the only program that was offered. I'm not sure if they're still operating or not. And then during those off seasons, we're running camps. I know, like during spring break or something, hey, we run a 1-week basketball camp to where we can utilize the coaches from the school system or utilize some of their players to come in and put on that camp. And so, I said, just trying to think of programming ideas and y'all's willingness to give us some flexibility to start looking at those things.
I have a question. So what would be the time frame if we said next week? Would it be possible, like for instance, like the youth football league, I didn't go, but there was a meeting last week and I think they're dissolving or the guy is not running or something to that effect. But for instance, what would be the time frame if we said, hey, the city wanted to run the youth football league?
Well, and I think some of that comes into giving, obviously, everyone's permission, approval, getting some numbers. Then I hate to say, there may be some leagues we don't want to run. I know one of those is like tackle football. I don't know if we want to get into that just because now with today's new regulations, everything else, I got to send coaches off to get proper tackling techniques. I got to send all this to where flag football is obviously, okay, pull the flags. It's not, don't hit someone with your head and get a concussion. So there's, like I say, there's some leagues that we may not want to get into. On the other hand, I don't think there's necessarily a time frame holding us back. We do want to, we've talked about the fall, we've talked about the spring, but again, it goes into some of this, y'all saying yes and keep going.
I'll make a motion that we give them the authority to move forward to explore the option of leagues and come back and present that to us.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay,
Great idea.
okay, wonderful. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Wonderful. Good luck, Tari. I think you'll do great.
Another thing I'd like to discuss, kind of following in with this same thing, is we obviously, and Tari will give us more of an update on the summer youth program, but we'd also like the opportunity to kind of explore after school. We've looked at some of that. We've changed some of our organizational structure in the last couple weeks. And so to where we've got some more positions and some position flexibility with some employees. We feel that we could run like I say, an after-school program. One of our drawbacks was transportation, but I think basically we could set up something to run from 3 to 6. I'm throwing the numbers out there, Monday through Friday. A parent would have to drop their child off, just like they would if they were any other daycare or any other after-school care, and possibly doing something of that. We just haven't finished running all the numbers and checked for interest. So I think that, hopefully that would also fall under this same exploring directive.
Oh, absolutely.
And the thought process there is kind of mirrored after a big brother, big sister program, correct? Is what we're thinking about from.
Yes. Kind of, sort of. So basically, I look at it like transportation might be an issue, but let's cross that bridge when we get there. Let's offer things first, and then whatever problems that we run into, let's be more proactive instead of reactive on things. Because I feel like we had a lot of interest from the summer youth program. Doing the summer youth program, we saw 100 different kids come throughout the summer program, throughout the whole summer. And I feel like that's a whole baseline of kids that could possibly be interested in an after-school program, a sports league, a arts and craft, like an arts class, or anything like that. You have a baseline of children that we already interacted with for 8 months. Well, 8 weeks, right? So if you start offering more, you can get kids from different sectors that like different things. So you're going to have your kids that like sports. You're going to have your kids that like arts and craft. You're going to have your kids like, parents going to be like, you know what? I get off at 6 o'clock. Hey, maybe older brother, older sister, aunt, someone can drop you off. I know you're going to be safe for 3 hours. And if you're going to do this every week and also maybe like, offer a snack or something like that, help with homework, stuff like that, those kind of structures I think will be great, especially if it's inexpensive. Like, we're not trying to charge like a daycare when they're charging, what, $200-300? If it's something that's affordable, let's just go the affordable route and just try to see what kind of feedback we get. From there, if we have to cross a bridge of transportation or something like that, let's do that when we get there.
I love the idea.
Do we have to do another, or can we wrap?
We'll wrap that in.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect, perfect. I love it. And is it too much to ask to get at the next meeting an update on kind of the direction you're thinking of going, like what sports you're wanting to start with, and a simple little budget? And I'd love to see something start this fall. I really would.
Do you have any recommendations for sports?
I don't, because I don't, like I said, there are some wonderful team, organizations here that run sports, and so I certainly don't want to step on any of their toes. So I think go the route of what the city is lacking and the sports that are lacking, and I don't know any arts and crafts group or club. I think that's a wonderful option also. Just go with the biggest need.
Okay.
And you do it, and you're there every day, and so you probably know way better than I do what the biggest need is.
Okay.
So, thank you.
I'd like to talk to you later about possibly doing some baseball.
Okay.
Okay, wonderful. All right. Our next agenda item are, Mr. Hooper, you're up again.
Yes.
Let us know what's going on with the parks.
First of all, I'd like to say I like full contact chess. But, and out at the range, I'd like to propose some shotgun weddings. I think would work.
Maybe we should have comedy night at
Yeah, because now we get to the topics I don't necessarily want to talk about. So some park updates. It was a weird month. It really was. We had out at Ned Houck. I didn't report last year. So the 4th of July, someone decided to play with fireworks at one of the restrooms out there and blew it up. I mean, literally destroyed most of it. I have contacted the company, and I don't know if y'all know they're zero water, so they've got it, basically it's a huge portalette that's built out of stone and everything else. But we got in, the tank underneath it is destroyed. It blew apart, dirt's coming in. So to fix it, you got to pull the roof off, pull all the bricks off, pull the slab up, replace the tank. There's no way to put it all back together. So it's basically a total loss. I'm meeting the insurance adjuster out there this week, Friday, and I'm also trying to get a bid for a new one from the company that built the old one. It's going to be a chunk of change. It really is. Someone dropping artillery shells down the toilet and didn't realize there might be gas down there, I guess is what happened. And hopefully, anyhow, I won't go there. Yeah, so that happened. On the same weekend, we had a light pole pushed over out there that we've repaired, got that back up. A bunch of playground borders got pulled up out there. An automobile went through one of the curves in the fences, tore up a gate, a fence, so we got that repaired. One of the golf frisbee goals was pulled out. The guys took it because they pulled it out of the ground and just left it laying there. Well, the guys from the Frisbee Golf took it so they could fix it. Our guys are gonna be putting it back in. There was 40-foot of fence cut at the skeet range, so someone could try to get in the backside of that. And like I say, this was all out at Ned Houck. We were out there this weekend, and Sunday when we were leaving, looked down and the motocross gates were open. So there was a group down there with trucks, 8, 10 motorcycles, their families, their kids. And I went down there and just asked them if they knew that it had been closed. And they're like, well, we thought we had permission because we're going to be getting insurance. And it's like, no, y'all, there's no contracts with the city. And so I asked them to leave. But we've seen traces of motorcycles out there. Now, currently we're in the process of working on the RFP, trying to get something to the motocross people to try to get something signed so that we can get the liability so they can actually do some work out there. I let them know that I was going to be locking the place up. They said they had to get some equipment out. I told them they had till the end of the week, and then I'm shutting the gates. So that's kind of where we stand on that, just because of the liability issues. They were trying to tell me that, well, we're not really out here hosting anything, and it's like, you and your kids are riding. If something happens, it's a city liability because there is no insurance and no coverage, so you're not even supposed to walk on the property at this point. So that was kind of where we stood on that. It was kind of an interesting week on that one. On a positive note, Green Acres, I've put in the PO for the pickleball. Right now we're scheduled for October. It's a tentative schedule, but they'll keep us updated as we go if they have something earlier, this and that. But yeah, so at least on the Green Acres, we're making some progress on that pickleball. Aquatics. I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. We're having, I guess, staffing issues, lifeguard issues. Most of my lifeguards are leaving because it's the end of summer and they're high school kids. They've worked their seasonal jobs. They've done this. We've lost some other positions of our part-time that were year-round. We're working on hiring 3. I've had 3 applications for 6 positions. Once I hire those, I'll have 3 lifeguards. Starting next week, those will be the only 3 lifeguards I have. There's no way they can run, and 2 of those are high school kids. Of those high school kids, they're like, well, we can come in the morning and work the early bird because that's the middle school swim, so we can lifeguard during that, and then they'd go to school. Well, they're on the swim team, so they can't lifeguard during the swim team, but they could lifeguard the swim club afterwards and the evening. But I don't have enough lifeguards to stay open for the swim team, much less sometimes during the day. Lifeguard, you need at least 2 to 3 people in the facility, and you really need 2 to 3 lifeguards and someone else, because they got to rotate. It is possible for them to sit there 6 hours and watch, but as we know, the first thing the lawyer's going to ask, well, when was your last break? And they're going to say, I hadn't had one today. Well, we're in trouble. We know that. It's a liability issue and it's a safety issue. So I guess at this point, I'm kind of wanting to prepare. We may have to cut some hours. We may have to do some juggling. All 3 facilities are open now. Once school hits, we're going to shut down the splash pad and the potter during the week. We'll still have some weekend guys because the school, they'll still be working on the weekends. Once you hit Labor Day, then again, I'm down to 3 lifeguards to try to run the pool. Aquatic Center, which is currently supposed to be open 16 hours a day. So like I say, there's no way. My one that's not in high school is a college girl, college young lady, I should say. And she has afternoon classes. But she can't be the only one there during the day to have it open. So we're just kind of at that point. And that's why we want to make the announcement of, hey, does anyone know how to swim? We can get you certified. We can get you, some part-time work with benefits and those sort of things. But yeah, we're just kind of getting into a bind on that. More as a heads up than anything else, just because we know there's going to be complaints if we have to juggle any of our time schedules. We're just kind of there's a lifeguard shortage across the nation. I saw the other day that Los Alamos County was trying to hire a senior lifeguard for $20 with a $1,000 signing bonus. And, it was just one of those numbers that it's like, we're not even in that ballpark. I understand different economy and different place, but, a 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid reads the 2. And we know what they see. They don't think about their housing yet, that they won't be able to afford to live anywhere. But, no, so just letting y'all know some of these things are going on. And, I didn't know if you had a question. And that's
probably-
pretty much it. Now, other than that, we've
Do we
we've
offer
had,
the training for the guards, or can we get someone to come in and do the training?
yes. There's possibilities, and we're also trying to hire Aquatics Facility Administrator, I believe is the actual title. We just haven't had a whole bunch of even people applying for that. We have had some people, we know we can send people to Lubbock, Amarillo to get some lifeguard training. That's hard to do with a high school. You know, having that, there's possibilities of bringing them in. But if we don't have the applicants, we're kind of stuck. I mean, and that's where it amounts to. We've got a good set. We've also created a casual position for lifeguards that we're just now about to open up. And what that would be is a non-scheduled lifeguard, no benefits. So some of these high school kids that aren't going to stay on can transition to that. So it'd be like a call up, like the substitute teacher type thing, to where, hey, I don't have anybody to work on Saturday. Can you come in? You just go down the list until one of the kids says, yeah, be glad to come in from 10 to 12. The problem is still, they're all in school. So between that 8 to 5 range, we're kind of in a bind.
Mr. Hooper, you said that some of the swim team kids are the ones that are lifeguarding, and that, is there a way for the swim team to provide their own lifeguards if they have them on site if they're in class? Is that something they can do on their own? Is that or is that still a liability for the city?
Part of it is, no, they can do that, but they would need to be city employees for the liability issue.
They have to be clocked in to
Correct.
do
It's
that.
a lifeguard, just to cover
Are they
us.
allowed to clock in and provide lifeguard duty and execute in the swim team exercises?
No. And one of the things I talked to actually Gordy about in the past is if we could get, let's say the swim team, all of them should be lifeguards. That's my personal opinion. So if they all got certified, then I guess what, Bob, John, y'all two aren't going to practice today. Go clock in lifeguard. Next day it's Tim and Amy that need to sit. I don't know if there could be something on some sort of rotation like that could come in, because we do have the ability to hire some of these positions. I don't know if they'd want to do that.
And the question with the swim team itself is that, do they technically have to have lifeguards on duty while the swim team is practicing? Can the coach act as the lifeguard? Yes. However, it's the city-owned pool, city-owned facility. That coach is focused on that team. And so what may be happening elsewhere within the pool isn't necessarily being watched. And so from us trying to make sure from a liability standpoint, there's eyes on the pool other than the coaches that are overseeing the practice.
Okay, thank you.
And also, like you said, following up on that same line, if you've ever seen him out there, sometimes that coach is walking up and down looking at lane 1, and he's trying to coach that, gentleman on how to swim better or do the proper strokes, and he's talking to him because they've got headphones on. He may not see what's in lane 8. I know at some point in time, Gordy used to, he'd give them an assignment. He'd go in there and be working on their schedule or their training practice while they're still out there swimming. So not necessarily eyes on all the time. And like I say, it's a city liability issue. With our agreement with the schools now, we have agreed that when they're in the pool, their coaches couldn't lifeguard and our lifeguards couldn't coach.
But during that time frame, are you still saying they need multiple guards? I would think that would be a multiple guard time period.
That may not be.
I would think one guard sitting there would be enough for.
You still have to have 2, though, from a rotation standpoint.
And even on the hour and a half, I think the number is 40. I'm not sure, anything over a certain number, you have to have a second one on deck. I want to say that number's 40. And then,
I don't think they have that many.
yeah, and they may not. So, and that may be something you could do, because you're talking an hour and a half window. Well, I take a break before, I take a break after, and may be covered. Then you still have to have, and we could have a second person in the facility that wouldn't be lifeguard. But I guess one of the problems there is now you're counting on one person to be there every day, 5 days a week.
Right.
And I believe during that time frame, our one person that's not on the swim team is going to be, she takes college from 3 to whatever, so her afternoon schedule is again, we're looking at all those options.
Does the college have a lifeguard?
Yes.
Yes.
Why can't they go swim over there?
The swim team or?
Yeah, the swim team. I mean, isn't this a problem for the schools?
I mean, all their swim blocks and everything that they utilize are at our facility. I'm not that familiar with CCC's facility.
It's not a competitive pool.
No.
The college's
And
facility.
it runs the schedule of classes. I mean, not during summer, but during winter, there's open swim, and then there are like water walking classes and aerobic waters, and it's, yeah, finding a slot of time would be a challenge
And
on this education.
yeah, and I don't think it's a matter of it's a matter of us trying to figure out, making sure that we have coverage. And so, I mean, the swim team is one aspect of this, because once again, theoretically, legally, are they allowed to practice and not have lifeguards on the deck? Yes, they are. And so if that's something that, during that time period where we can't cover that, then we'd inform them that we can't cover it, and we'd take whatever liability waivers, et cetera, we need to. We would work with them on that, but it's logistics, and we're gonna find a way to make it work.
Sounds like we need some lifeguards.
Sounds like we need some lifeguards.
Where do you go to apply to be a lifeguard?
City website.
Okay, very
Yes.
good.
And it is currently posted.
Okay, wonderful.
Can we advertise at the community college pool?
Yes. And again, we're back to such a small community. Yeah, we've reached out to, Eastern New Mexico, reached out to the community college. I've called some people in Dallas. I think Tari's called some people in Houston and just said, hey, we have some openings, we have some options. And that's more for the
Aquatic specialist.
the aquatic facility operator or administrator than the lifeguards. But, there's a point of when you got to start sometimes at the top and work down to fill in some of those spots, which would also, the position's going to require a person that can train lifeguards, which would then help solve the problem from the bottom up, so.
Okay, do you have any other parks updates, Mr. Hooper? No. Okay, wonderful. Recreation update, Mr. Curry? Summer youth program went great.
Yeah, summer youth program went great.
Perfect.
Just a recap from earlier, just leagues and just doing more programs. You kind of did a motion on that, and that's kind of all I got right now.
Perfect. I think you're ready to go. And it doesn't look like Mr. Lechner's here for a zoo update, but Mr. Hooper,
Yes.
you're a one-man show tonight.
I am trying to monopolize this. And back to some of the discussion we were talking about even on leagues earlier. I think some of that may come into some of the aquatics. Once we are fully staffed, we'd like to explore the option to do the water aerobics classes and some of these other things, swim lessons. So we'll be also, I'm assuming that falls under kind of the same category of exploring leagues. Okay, for the zoo, right now, actually, Damien and Lisa should be driving back from Albuquerque. They were in a safe capture program all week, put on by the San Diego Zoo, hosted in Albuquerque, and basically it has to do with medicines and tranquilizing animals and stuff like that. So just something for their continued education so they could take care of the animals better. That way also they have some of the options to take care of things themselves as opposed to calling in vets every time the tiger needs a shot. So things along these lines. And they spent the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday up there, so they're coming back today. Let's see, we've received some money from the public for enrichment items. One of the things I'm learning in this job is to speaking some of the language. So when I heard enrichment items for the animals, I was thinking vitamins. No, those are just basically chew toys for the tiger and licks for the giraffes and stuff like that. So they're picking up a good amount of those while they're in Albuquerque. They've got a company there and they're just making use of that trip. Lisa and Damien will be out at the fair August 19th and 20th. They're going to take some of the new Markhor babies, little sheep, little goats, I'm not sure what category they fall into. And they're just some neat little bottle babies that can clear a 6-foot fence. It's amazing. They're about a foot tall, foot and a half tall. They are some jumpers, but they're bottle babies and they love attention. they would like to, at some point in time, we need to bring our animal adoption program to the committee. Currently, you can adopt, we're doing some individual animals, and they were trying not to duplicate. Well, what we're trying to do is set up a new program to where you can give a $25 adoption for the tiger, which would put you in a certain class, and you'd get a thank you letter. And at a different level, you might donate $100 and adopt the tiger, and you would get a stuffed animal and a tour of the tiger, you know, and at some point you're, you know, adopting a tiger for $5,000, and you're in our big tier program, and we're gonna get the mayor and Commissioner Paula to come out and have dinner with you and the tiger. So that's one of our plans.
In
So
the
we're
cage
trying.
or out of the cage?
So it's just one of the programs we're trying to work on. We're trying to work on that, and let's see, there was the animal adoption, some of the exhibit adoptions for donations, an animal encounter program to where you and your family come in for a certain fee, and we get to feed the giraffes. You know, Damien's gonna walk you around, tell you about the giraffe, what's special, where it comes from, some facts, and then you and the kids get to go feed the giraffe. Things like that. The bat-eared foxes, if you ever go in there with them and they'll start just sort of climbing on you and playing, there are just some neat little critters that just kind of makes you giggle sitting there. It really is fun. But some of these things that we're trying to present and we're gonna bring to you. On the, let's see, the barrier on the bobcats. So the bobcats and I think the carousels, they're carnivores, so they really don't like each other. So we had, at one point, we had two, but we had to keep them separate because they fight. Since then, we've gotten down to where we just have one, so we've taken the middle partition out to where we've doubled up the space, and they actually have some more, a little bit more room to play. It really helps with things. The two large tortoises were in the back by the alligator. We've moved them up to the miniature ponies, just to give them more room. They were just digging and playing around in that one area, and we just moved them into a different, larger area to give them a little bit more room. They're slow movers, but they do move around. So, let's see, on the reptile house, the majority of the larger animals have been moved out. They're still working on reopening that and doing some stuff. They're gonna probably try to turn into a nocturnal house. Basically put in black lights, all the animals that never come out during the day that people wanna see. A lot of times people think the animals are hiding from them or not being sociable or being mistreated just because they're used to sleeping all day long. They come out at night and play. So if we switch up some lights and do some things, hopefully we can get some exhibits to where you actually get to see them. A little bit neater. Let's see, I think that's my list of things to tell you. Let's see, we sold 5 eland to a company out of Texas that came and picked them up, and they brought us the Markhors. They also have approached us on possibility of doing some giraffe and bringing up a bull for our giraffe. So hopefully possibility of having some more in the future. Looking at some other things, we've got we're putting in outdoor trails grants, working on that for next week for some zoo improvements. On our ICIP, we have put in for, what we're trying to do, one of our goals is accreditation. I think we've talked about that, and Damien's talked about that. And so they have different milestones or things you have to be accredited, and one of those is a infirmary quarantine area that we don't currently have. We really do need one, so we put that in on our ICIP, and we're looking at some grants for that.
Was applying for the 500,000 for that quality?
Applying for the quality of life is gonna be more for the back area, trying to redo. We're looking at doing some expansions, and I think one of Damien's goals is to get some areas to where we have an African area, an Asian area, an Americas, you know, and get some things in different areas to where you can walk through and they're grouped together. Some of the animals, they're actually used to seeing other animals of that species, you know, in the wild, and so we're trying to do some of that. They've got the camel, been working on that. Obviously, we got it named. The habitat, I think, for him is getting closer. The welding projects in the back, so making some progress there.
Wonderful. Does Mr. Lechner ever sleep?
Occasionally.
He's got a lot of energy.
We get email. I'll come in the morning. I'll get an email from him at 9 o'clock at night with a new idea. You know, that's.
I love it.
So
I love it.
no, it is. It's a lot of energy and.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Hooper. And I guess that kind of brings us to the next agenda item, which is for the good of the order. And the first item is Love the Zoo at 8 a.m. on Saturday, September 24th. But can you give us a little summary of what exactly that is?
Claire?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Parks Board. We're working with Damien. He has a list of items that he would like to achieve during the Love the Zoo event. So we're inviting the public to come out. I shared it with the base today when I was at Quality of Life, and invited them to come and help to improve the zoo, and just join in the fun and just have a good morning of painting and cleaning and weeding and doing all the things you need to do to make a exhibit look great.
Well, wonderful. Well, I did get a phone call day before yesterday. So you have your first group of volunteers. The high school swim team has agreed to come out and bring the entire team that morning to
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you.
be of assistance. Does anyone have anything else? Okay, wonderful. Well, our next meeting is Monday, September 19th at 5:30 p.m. here in the library. We are adjourned.